Right. So today we're going to deep dive into something that I think is super relevant to everybody, but especially for someone like you, always learning, always like pushing the boundaries. It's this idea of stress-free living.
Yeah.
And we're looking at this podcast script.
Right.
It's actually aimed at a younger audience. It's called Stress-Free Living, a youth's guide to peace and balance. Honestly, like, who couldn't use a little more peace?
Right. Exactly.
And balance in their lives?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're not
Absolutely.
technically a youth anymore, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's got some really cool stuff in here.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting ideas. And one of the things I found really fascinating was they actually talk about deleting social media,
Interesting.
but not for the reasons that you might think.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So let's dig into that a little bit later. But first, I want to kind of get your take on this whole idea of stress, because the script really zeroes in on this idea of comparison being a major stressor, especially like with social media.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's presenting this like perfect curated version of themselves.
Yeah, it's the highlight reel, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's so easy to get caught up.
It is, yeah. And I think for someone like the learner, they're always absorbing information, always kind of pushing themselves
Fully, yeah.
to learn more and do more. So I can see how that comparison trap could really, become a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you're constantly feeling behind.
Yeah, you feel like you're not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not doing enough, you're not achieving enough.
And I love how the script kind of addresses that head on.
Right.
With this like really cool analogy of the ocean.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
So it talks about how every waves has its own rhythm, like its own way of reaching the shore.
Right.
And it's like, just like those waves, your journey is going to unfold at its own pace.
Right.
There's no need to compare yourself to anyone else.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and it's so true. I mean, we're all on our own unique paths and journey.
Exactly. And that's something that I think is really important.
Yes.
For someone who identifies as the learner,
Absolutely.
they're always kind of comparing themselves to what other people are doing. So it's like,
what are they studying? What skills are they mastering? What books are they reading?
exactly.
And it just creates this constant sense of, I need to do more. I need to be more.
Yeah. And that's not what this is about at all.
No, not at all. This is about finding that peace and balance within yourself.
But what I also really love about this script is it's not just like, oh, here's the problem.
Right.
It actually gives you some really practical advice.
Okay. So like what kind of stuff are we talking about?
So they outline these 3 stress-busting techniques.
Okay.
And the first one is called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique.
The 5-4-3-2-1. Okay.
I know it sounds kind of weird,
It does. Yeah. What is that?
but it's actually super simple. And I think you can probably explain it better than me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's essentially a grounding exercise.
Okay.
And it's really about bringing your awareness back to the present moment, using your senses. So it's 5-4-3-2-1.
Yeah.
5 things you can see,
I see.
4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch,
Okay.
2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's a really, really simple technique.
Yeah.
But it can be so powerful because when you start to feel that anxiety creeping in, those spiraling thoughts, just taking a moment to really connect with your senses
Yeah.
and notice what's around you can really kind of pull you out of that.
Yeah, I could see how that would be helpful, just like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. It's like a reset button for your nervous system.
So simple,
Got
but
it? Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so technique number 2.
Okay, what's number 2?
They call it the freedom to say no.
Setting boundaries.
Yes.
I love that.
And I think this is something that
It's so important.
is so important.
But it's so hard to do.
It is so hard.
Because, we're always taught to be helpful and accommodating.
Right, you don't want to let people down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we feel this pressure to say yes to everything.
Yeah, and especially for the learner
Oh, absolutely.
who's constantly like being presented with all these new opportunities.
Right, new things to learn, new projects to get involved in.
It's so tempting to say yes to everything.
Right, you want to do it all. You want to experience it all.
Yeah, but it's like
But you can't.
you can't do it all.
You can't, and that's okay.
And I think the script does a good job of reminding us that saying no,
Yes.
it's not selfish.
It's not.
It's actually a way of like
It's an act of self-care.
protecting yourself.
Exactly. It's about protecting your energy,
Yeah.
your time, your well-being.
Because if you're constantly saying yes to everyone else,
Yeah, you're going to burn out.
you're gonna burn out.
You're not going to be able to show up
Exactly.
as your best self for anyone.
All right, so
Okay.
we've talked about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. We've talked about the freedom to say no.
Yes.
Technique number 3.
Okay, hit me with it.
This is where that social media thing comes back in.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The digital detox.
Okay, so tell me about that. What's their take?
So basically, they recommend taking one full day
A whole day.
every week, completely offline.
Wow. So no phone,
No phone,
no computer,
no computer,
no internet.
no screens,
Okay, so like a full-on unplug.
full unplug.
Interesting.
And the idea is to rediscover what they call real life
I see.
outside of the digital world.
Okay.
And they actually share this story about someone who deleted their social media and they realized that real life was still happening
Right. Yeah.
all around them.
I get that.
They just weren't paying attention.
Right, because they were so focused on this curated online world.
Exactly. And it's like, it makes you think, what are we actually missing out on
Absolutely.
when we're constantly plugged in?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because sometimes we get so caught up
Right.
in the digital world that we forget to actually experience.
Live our lives in the real world.
But I'm curious, like, what would you say, like, what does real life mean?
That's a good question.
To someone who,
Especially for the learner.
who's all about learning and exploring new ideas.
Right. I think for the learner, real life is about engaging with the world in a tangible way. You know, it's about having conversations.
Right.
It's about exploring new places, trying new things, experiences that you can't replicate through a screen.
Experiences. Yeah, I love that.
It's about being present in the moment
Yes.
and letting those experiences shape your understanding of the world.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and it kind of leads into the next part of the script, which I think is really beautiful.
Okay, tell me.
It's not just about managing stress.
Right.
It's about this whole vision of like what a truly fulfilling life can actually look like.
Okay, so what do they say?
And it's not about like material possessions or achievements.
It's about the simple joys.
It's about those simple joys.
I love that. Right.
Yeah.
And they talk about things like keeping a gratitude journal.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Have you ever done that?
I have. I've tried it. It's hard to stick with it.
It is hard to stick with it.
It is.
But it's like they recommend just writing down like 3 things every day that you're grateful for.
It's such a simple thing,
So simple.
but it can really shift your perspective
And they say that.
because you're training your brain to focus on the positive
Yeah. It's retraining your brain to focus on the positive.
instead of dwelling on the negative.
And for the learner, that's super important.
Absolutely, because they're constantly bombarded with
Right.
new information, new challenges, new things to learn.
Yeah. So to be able to,
So having that gratitude practice can really help them stay grounded
grounded and positive.
and appreciate all the good things that are already in their life
Nice.
instead of always striving for more.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So gratitude journal. They also talk about rekindling creativity. You know, like those hobbies and passions that we might have kind of put aside.
And because life gets in the way.
Life gets busy.
Yeah, we get busy with work and responsibilities, and we forget to make time for those things that bring us joy.
Exactly.
And I think that's especially important for the learner,
Right.
because for them, tapping into creativity isn't just about stress relief. It's another way to learn and grow.
Yeah.
It's another way to explore new ways of expressing themselves and connecting with the world.
It's another way to learn.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so gratitude journal, rekindling creativity. And then the last one,
What's the last one?
genuine connection. And they tell this really cool story
Okay.
about someone who just like randomly called a long lost friend.
Yeah.
And it's this reminder that sometimes like the most meaningful moments
Yeah.
come from just like
Reaching out.
reaching out and
I mean,
nurturing
those personal bonds.
those personal bonds.
That's so true.
Right.
And, you know, sometimes we get so caught up in our own lives and our own stresses
right.
that we forget to just connect with the people that matter most to us.
And then the script ends on this like really poignant note.
Okay, I'm ready.
So it talks about this elderly person being asked about their greatest life's lesson.
Okay.
And they say in youth, we chase saving time.
Okay.
In old age, we realize time itself is the treasure.
Wow, that's powerful.
Isn't that powerful?
It is. Yeah, it makes you think
It really makes you think.
about how we're spending our time.
Right. Like, what are we actually prioritizing?
What really matters in the end.
Exactly. And it all kind of circles back to this idea of
Yeah.
finding that balance
Balance between achieving and simply being.
between achieving and just being.
Yes.
And the script actually says that so much of our stress comes from forgetting the joy of being
Right.
while chasing
What we should become.
what we should become.
Yeah, we're so focused on the future.
On what we want to achieve, on who we want to be,
That we forget to just enjoy the present moment.
And I think that's like a really good takeaway, especially
The learner.
for the learner.
Yeah.
Because they're always striving for more, always trying to improve.
Always on to the next thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that
Yeah.
the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
the journey is just as important as the destination.
And finding joy in the present moment is essential for a truly fulfilling life.
And that is what this whole deep dive has been about.
Finding that peace
Finding that peace and that balance
and that joy
in a world that's constantly telling us
to do more.
to do more, be more, have more.
Yeah, it's a constant pressure.
So I hope you found this helpful.
I hope so too.
I hope you learned some new things.
Me too.
And I hope that you can take some of this information and apply it to your own life.
And find a little bit more peace and joy in your everyday life. Exactly.
Yay.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.